Calling from a 386 area code. Who's this?
Hi there. What's good, gang? Let me just start off by saying I always have slight difficulty hearing you when I call in, so I think the best way to do this is to state my position and then my question, which is for Sam and Michael. I guess anyone who wants to jump in, but I was supposed to call back yesterday, but I missed that opportunity. But last time, I'm a new atheist caller, and since then I've watched videos with Omar Aziz and other things that Michael Brooks told me to look at, and those basically answered my questions from last week. I just would like to say, I don't know what you guys do, but I wouldn't conflate new atheists as a whole with the chronically incredulous Sam Harris. He doesn't represent all of us, but sadly it seems like he represents the vocal majority of us. But I'd much rather align myself with the sophistication of Daniel Dennett, or, I mean, at least Christopher Hitchens had the, linguistic skill and
what's your name?
Faculty to,
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Zach.
Zach, let me ask you. Let me ask you a question. Why is it?
Oh, I can hear you fine now.
Okay, great. Why is it that there are people who call into the show and they just say their position, but other people, I notice this with libertarians and new atheists, why is it that they have to identify the group that they belong in and then further define that group as that even though they're part of that group, they're not aligned with other aspects of that group? Why don't you just tell me what it is, the issue, and what it is you want to talk about? Why do you have to identify yourself as a new atheist?
Because that's kind of what the new atheist movement was about. It was about bringing atheists out of the shadows to actually kind of vocalize secular beliefs and systems without militant atheism, without saying you were one.
I think, to be fair, and I don't identify
it wasn't about...
Can you hear me, Zach?
Yeah, I can.
I think, to be fair, it wasn't about... I mean, I don't particularly identify as an atheist myself, one way or another, but I'm more of an agnostic. But regardless, I think the point was, I guess, it's easy to take for granted where we live and in our social circles. It's not particularly controversial, but I think it was. I think that was the motivation. It's like you're in Texas or something, and you say, "Wait a second, no, fuck you, I'm an atheist." You have some identity.
I get that. It's just. I don't know. There's so much of this, and I guess to certain times I identify as a liberal or of the left or something, but I just I don't need to sort of, I don't know. It's just, it's a weird tick I notice in certain people who, in certain groups, have to introduce. Yeah. So just tell me okay, so, and yes, I definitely think that people, that atheists get short shrift in terms of at least intellectually in our society. And it's problematic. And I imagine it's even more problematic in many parts of the country that I don't want to be around because of stuff like that, of ignorance. But so what's your point?
Well, last time I called in, I almost arrogantly implied that Islam, a group that it was in desperate need of a reform, and this kind of goes with what you were just saying, that since then I've had a kind of change of heart, and I've been watching and reading the more popular new atheists of today and realizing kind of how conservative, how almost ultra conservative the paradigm has shifted. And I was wondering, how do you reform a group like New Atheism? And do you think that New Atheism is a group that needs a reform, or do you even think it's a significant group at all? Because they're spouting, it's anti-feminist stuff or anti-Black Lives Matter stuff lately.
Well, I just think it's just a lot of people who have taken they're commenting about things that they just, and it started with Islam, which is easier to do, but now it expands to everything else, about things that you just simply don't, or not you personally, but they simply just don't know about. And they have a singular worldview that they think explains everything. They think they're like libertarians like that. They think they found the singular thing that explains everything. And then They don't need to do the work. They don't need to know history, politics, policy, and that's always been my beef. It's not with atheism, but the way it comes across online and people who worship Sam Harris, and it doesn't surprise me. And the last thing I'll say is watching Sam Harris be shocked that so many of his followers and devotees are supporting Trump shows his own delusion and lack of intellectual agility. But again, just illustrates exactly what he's promoting. Apparently, he wasn't even fully aware of what he was promoting.
Yeah, I have no doubt that he wasn't fully aware. I mean, unless the guy was just the most disingenuous person in the world. I mean, I would, personally, it's like, I don't know, can you reform men's right advocates? I mean, I think I think there was probably at one point like people saying like, hey, in the context of divorce law, we should get out of the dark ages and appreciate that fathers should have the same role in kids' lives or something like that. And then all of a sudden it turns into, I don't know, some God knows what. I mean, look, I think people should have respect for people who don't buy into religion. I believe there is a real problem with fundamentalism in all religions, but fundamentalism in all intellectual pursuits, frankly. And so, I don't know. I don't know how one would go about reforming new atheism as an intellectual idea, because frankly, outside of like YouTube wars, and Sam Harris has desperately tried to get some type of recognition as an actual sort of like public intellectual on this topic, right? I just don't see it happening. I don't see genuine intellectuals engaging in this stuff other than to say like some of this is toxic. And so, frankly, I would just, I don't know. I mean, if it was important to me, which it's not, I would just say like, I'm not going to fight for the moniker new atheist. I'm just an atheist. Yeah. And I think that people who are atheists should be respected for their beliefs in the same way.
And if you want, I think across the board, religious or non-religious, a lot of people understand the importance of secularism, which is worth fighting for, certainly when it comes to like, making sure that clean science is taught in school as an example.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, secularism is very close, it seems to me, to being a good citizen.
Yeah, you can make a comparison between the new atheist movement and the sort of parallel skeptic movement, which also had its own problems with anti-feminism, or whether they were going to be feminist or pro-feminist. Rebecca Watson got a lot of flack on this for like saying, "Don't always ask me out on the elevators when we're at conventions," and stuff like that. And so like there are problems in these communities. And I think these movements built on like so-called rationality, which I am probably maybe the most sympathetic to in this office. They have a sort of implicit like condescension, like we know what's right, and that's what's really problematic with the new atheists with regards to Islam, because they assume that they know everything based off like excerpts that they read in whatever book.
Well, and it shows to me also collapse in humanities education. But the first thing I ever thought of it was I agree with you. Hitchens was a lot more entertaining and fun and far more informed, but this stuff came to my attention through his advocating the invasion of Iraq. So in some ways, the inception of all of it, as far as speaking out on big major issues, and Sam Harris from the beginning, even his earliest books already had, the torture thought experiments and the essentially just being in some ways the equivalent of like Tony Blair or Joe Lieberman, just giving a different umbrella of group of people the permission to support Bush-Cheney policies.
Appreciate the call.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Bye. Hello, you. I'm Sam Seder. Looking for smart progressive talk that is occasionally amusing? Well, subscribe to our YouTube feed. Subscribe to our podcast. Like us on Facebook. And just generally enjoy us.